In this video, we're going to be exploring mid-century abstract art. Now, by the mid-century, I mean the middle of the 20th century. This art came out during the 50s, 60s, perhaps even the 70s, and it reflected abstraction often in relatively simple ways. A lot of the art of this era was suitable to be framed as posters and other elements to decorate a home. And today on Mixed Media Masters, we're going to see if we can create something that is reminiscent of that bygone era. Hello makers, and welcome back to the studio. This week, our media of choice will be cut paper, and we're going to go fancy with some color layering and some elements to really pull things together. Now, when we talk about paper, my paper of choice is the Strathmore. I love the watercolor paper because it has a little bit more texture, and it also allows me to just have more to glue on into. Gives me some more texture to do that. So, not a sponsor, just a recommendation because it is a good paper source. And let's get a big sheet out here. We're going to be working on one of these. We can put the rest of the pad away. You know, there's nothing more satisfying to me than a blank sheet of paper. It represents so much possibility. So let's talk about what we can do with this. And again, we're going to be kind of thinking about some sort of I want to put kind of a main shape right here in the middle. That's really the objective. And then we're going to figure out how to frame it, if you will. Now, when we talk about different colored papers, and again, I don't want to go too deep. We'll have a special show that talks all about the papers. But going and picking up, basically cardstock. You can pick up papers like this from Michaels, and Joann Fabrics has things like this. And of course, you can buy these things through Amazon and other companies online. And it just, again, I've got some things I've been collecting over the years. Some of this gives you what we call analogous colors. Colors that are kind of next to each other in the spectrum. So different shades of a different color. I have some gray here. There's some red colors that I'm going to be able to use in this. It's kind of a centralized color. And so what we end up, from a hue is going to change depending upon which piece of paper we're using. So there's a lot of different options, and I encourage you to explore and play around with whatever makes you happy. Again, sometimes you just get a collection of paper, almost reminiscent of the construction paper we may have used when we were kids, right? So in this scenario, I'm thinking I want the centralized piece of art here to be kind of a red color. So I'm going to start with a bright red to kind of anchor this piece and also draw the eye. So I'm going to go with one of these, kind of bright. Now I'm working with an 18 by 24 inch piece of paper here. And so I want to figure out how I can frame things in. And one of the things I'd like to do with this, not necessarily put a large rectangular square in the middle of it, but something that's a little bit more, organic. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to just kind of start and create a shape that will allow me to create almost kind of like a big red cloud, if you will, kind of a cloudy thing that we might have in here. Let's get that. You guys can see it as well. There we go. That's looking okay. Let me dip into here a little bit. No right answer. Again, beautiful thing about art is it is what it is. And there will be times that you'll create something and you'll look at it and say, yeah, not so much. There will be times that you'll look at something and say, wow, did I do that all by myself? So there's some good stuff in here. All right, let's see what we can do. I'm going to curve it up a little bit here. All right. Not unhappy with how this is coming out. Not looking for symmetry here. Looking for kind of something that's a little bit more organic. But now, if I were to use this, and by the way, when you have your scraps, and you will have scraps, sometimes these come in real handy. I have the tendency not to throw a lot of things away. I have a scrap box that I work with. It's actually a milk crate full of scraps that I can work with. But I like this. Now, again, when you're playing around with paper, one of the things that's really nice about this media is that, you can turn things around. Like, hey, how about that? Or what happens if I do like this? Okay. And so you can kind of play around with this, say, which angle here is the one that really draws my attention. I'm not going to lie. I think this here is not a bad place to start. Just make sure I get that so you guys can see it. That'll be good. Thinking I want to do that. Now, in this particular piece, what I'm also thinking is I'd like to be able to create some sort of portals in here. I'm going to use a utility knife to cut some holes, probably just some square holes in here. And then we're going to let some other colors peek through. Now, one of the things I want to make sure, I do want to build on this piece of paper, but while I'm pulling some pieces together, I certainly don't want the paper to get destroyed, cut up in any way. So I'm going to just move this here. Let's make sure we can get this where you guys can see more of it. And I'm going to grab my utility knife and working here on my cutting mat, which you can see has been well loved. There's paint from previous projects on here. I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to make a little bit of a hole here. There we go. That should work nicely. And, you know, no right answer. Maybe I'll put an angle in here just to make it a little bit different. There we go. We want to clean it as best we can because, again, if we, you know, have little bits and pieces that are torn off or cut, we're gonna notice those. But not hating that so far. So let me do something similar. And again, my decision here is to just kind of align all of my shapes roughly on the same axes. So that means instead of, you know, making something diagonal in one way, I want to make sure that they're all roughly straight up and down according to what I'm doing here. So that's the plan anyway. So there we are. We have some holes. All right, now let's create some different colors to peek through here. So again, I'm going to go into my scrap bin to a certain degree. Got some good pieces here. There you go. There's a complementary color for red, which would be green. But also thinking maybe some orange yellow that can shine through here as well. What else do I have here in my bin? I've got some purple. That'd be fun. Some brighter yellow. That may work. Some pink. A teal type of blue, good. And actually, maybe this is more teal, or a purple, a blue-green kind of thing. So all I want to be able to do here and make it really simple is I want to create something that I can glue onto the back here that will just shine through. All right, so we have 8 holes. I'm probably going to need 8 different colors to make this happen. And easiest thing to do is just to come in here with a pair of scissors and just create something that will fit on the back of the hole here. Let's start with the yellow. And again, if I come in here and just say, let me just have a square of yellow. Doesn't have to be too large to cover up the holes that we've created. We do need a little bit of room because we want to glue around it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it down so that when it's glued down tight, it's going to shine through that hole. You see what we're doing here? So I'm going to grab my trusty glue stick. There we go. And by the way, if you want to know more about the different adhesives that we can use in these different projects, I have put together a video that talks about different adhesives and glues that you might want to check out. So by the way, you can find that link down below here. All right, so I'm going to come back in here and again, I might want to mark somewhere just to help myself out which side I want to be able to glue on. I'm going to glue on this side here. So I'm going to grab my glue stick and I'm going to paste around the hole and try not to get it on the hole in the sense it's not going to make a big difference, but you just don't want to scrape your glue stick across the hole and have a lot of glue end up there. Okay, but that's it. Just put some adhesive in there, and now when we check in, you can see there's a little bit of glue that will dry and will disappear. So I'm not too worried about that. So there's some yellow. That's kind of nice. So let's take a little bit of green now. And again, let me just grab a square and grab a square. And the real question is, where do we put it? I think I'm going to put that right here. No right answers. No wrong answers. All right, get some glue around that, and let's paste that down. And again, you might want to just make sure you push that firmly so it doesn't end up falling off later. And again, I don't know if you can see it, but because of the glue stick I'm using, the purple, that purple disappears and becomes transparent when it's no longer has any water in it. So when this dries, you'll get rid of it. So I'm seeing a little bit of purple in the corner there, and that will go away. I'm not worried about it. So that looks pretty good. Let's come in here. Let's hit some pink in here. So again, we're just kind of playing around with some ideas, and it's really about a combination of color and form and what we can do when we match these things up to one another. So that's a good start. Now, let's just move some stuff out of the way here, give myself room, and bring my piece of paper back in. Let me cap my glue for the time being. We'll need that later for sure. But we'll bring this back in. And now, if I were to take my piece, and again, remember which was up. Here we go. This is how I see how that's coming together. Oh, let me move that so you guys can see it a little bit better, right? So this is really, what we're trying to accomplish at this point is something that will kind of hold this space. Now, one of the things I'm also thinking about is this red by itself is a little two-dimensional. And one of the things we can do to make it a little bit more interesting, so I'm going to go back to my red palette here, and I'm going to go, and I want to go down a color, a shade, if you will. And let me just play around with this idea. If I had a shape of some sort underneath this that was kind of peeking out, how would that do? Would that really enhance this to a certain degree? And you know what? I think the answer is yes. So I'm going to try to do something very similar. I'm going to create kind of again, another organic shape out of this new red piece. And I want it to serve as a bit of a backdrop. And of course, I don't want them to necessarily match each other. I want them to be, have an interrelationship. So let's just see what happens here. I'm going to trim this in a similar way. I'm just not going to go as far from the edge. We'll get the square edge off of here. And again, let's make sure we may need to clean that up. And sometimes you just, you let the materials guide you. Sometimes it's just, put my scissors on autopilot and just say, all right, talk to me. What do you think would be kind of interesting here? So I'm just going to create something. Again, I'm not looking for symmetry to any great degree, although I think this is coming out in a fairly symmetrical way. Well, we'll put some variation in. And again, we can come back and make cuts to it later if there's something about it we don't love, right? Anything we're creating has a lot of flexibility, to be changed. All right, so now if I take this piece that I've just cut and I put it in behind this, again, you can kind of see the interrelationship between the two pieces. And it can be really interesting. It can be really, really interesting. Not only the colors, which are, again, kind of working this space together, but the shapes of these pieces of paper are starting to really come into play here. And again, I'm going to want to think about, is this going to sit in the center of my page? Is it going to be in the upper quadrant? Is it going to be in the lower quadrant? What am I looking for? And I think in this case, I'm going to be looking at something that's in the upper quadrant. And so we can make that happen, right? So one of the things I do before I, do any final paste down is I may look at my piece and say, are there any rough edges or any things when I cut that I don't love? There's like a little piece right here. I don't love it. So I can trim that. Again, is there anything else here that's, I got a kind of a point right here I don't love. I'm just going to smooth things out a little bit. Yeah, not so bad, And all right, going to remember which my top is, and actually I have my bottom piece here. I have a little place where I want to just pick it up a little bit. All right, there we go. All right, so in this case, what I want to do is I want to be able to, I'm going to bring this piece up a little bit closer to the top of the page. And I'm going to take this to the side, and so it doesn't get damaged. And I want to focus on pasting this bottom piece down. Now, when I'm pasting, I don't necessarily want to paste on my piece of paper because, again, I get a lot of extra glue on there, and it may just mess it up a little bit. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll work on my cutting mat here, or I may just work with just a sheet of copier paper. Right? Something that you don't mind getting glue over and perhaps just throwing away later. And so I'll put that down and I'll make sure that I, get the edges. Now the objective here when we're gluing down a large piece like this is to get as good a coverage as we can because we certainly don't want this piece coming off in the future. So glue stick, here we go. I'll just bring it out a little bit and I'm going to start, I'm going to put some lipstick on this thing. That's what we're doing. And let me just get in here. But again, I'm going to work over my scrap paper so I don't get glue everywhere. You know, and sometimes I've glued on my cutting mat more than once, and well, it works after a while. You have to go wash your cutting mat. So. Now you want to get as smooth a layer in here as you can. You want to work fairly quickly as well, because once you start putting the glue on here, it starts to dry almost immediately. But like I said, I don't want this back piece to be coming off this this piece of watercolor paper anytime soon. So let's get in here. And by the way, it's always handy to have a couple of glue sticks lying in wait, because you can go through these fairly quickly when you are gluing up large pieces like this. All right, let me get that in the frame there. Yeah. So again, you might want to have multiple glue sticks just in case you run into a situation where you run out of one. That happens more than often than you think. That's why I buy them in bulk. All right, so we got a pretty good glue down on here, and I'm gonna get my glue sheet out of the way so I don't end up sticking it onto anything. And let me get this main piece of paper back into place. And I'm gonna take, and again, you know, the thing about glue sticks is they are somewhat forgiving. If I wanna move things a little bit after I try to paste it down, I have some flexibility. If you're using like a two-part adhesive, like a spray adhesive, forget it. Once it goes down, it's pretty much staying down, so you're gonna have to make sure you make your mind up. But this looks pretty good for me. So I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna smooth it down. And let's get our edges there. And again, we wanna make sure this is pretty secure to the piece of paper that we're pasting it on, our watercolor paper. Excellent. Let's come back and get our top creation and figure out how that's going to come in and fit in here. And again, I have one thing I want to clean up a little bit. I'm getting a little bit of white showing through. This particular construction paper is actually, it's more of a painted paper, if you will. And so sometimes you can see the white paper. Sometimes I like the effect, and sometimes it just gets in the way. It looks a little messy. All right, so I don't hate that. So again, let me just move this out of the way. And let me go work on my gluing sheet again. And let's get, this is now going to be our gluing piece. So once again, just remembering that my pink color is the up color. So I'm going to grab this and kind of center it in here best I can. Looks like we're going to be totally within the dark red. There we go. And let me get that secured down. All right, kind of cool, kind of cool. Again, you know, we're making this up as we go along. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen, but the good news is we're going to be the first ones to see what the masterpiece looks like when it's all done. So what I want to do now is something to kind of, this is almost like a cloud, isn't it? And I'm thinking, you know, maybe it's a cloud that it's a rain cloud, but I'm thinking something that could really frame up this image, right? Because just sitting by itself, it doesn't look terrible, but I think something that kind of frames it and gives additional contrast. One of the things I've been thinking about is using some darker colors. Let's see if I can pull them out of my pile here. And pulled a few scraps here. And I'm thinking, you know, nothing like a darker gray color to really, again, pop this red. Because with all this white here, the white is very bright and the red is very bright. But if we start to obscure the white with this gray color, then it's going to give us an opportunity to really pop the red out even more and really be a major focal point. Now, do I want to just take a big chunk of gray and drop it in the middle of what I'm doing here? Not necessarily. But what I'm thinking is almost kind of like rain from a rain cloud. I'm thinking these kind of bands that can kind of come in here. And I'm gonna mix up a couple of different grays so we have some contrast within the grays as well to make it a little bit more interesting. And I've got some of the same colors here. Now I'm going to show you one of my favorite tools in the whole world. I'm going to take this piece and again put it out of harm's way for the moment. We'll just tuck it up here on the top of my cutting mat. But that's what we're talking about. We're talking about cutting, and right here is a rotary cutter. Now, a rotary cutter is just that. It's it's basically a razor blade that's in a wheel, and it's used predominantly for cutting fabric. So if you're a quilt maker, you're probably familiar with this, but it's simply just almost like a pizza roller, where it allows you to go in and cut your stuff. And so one of the things I like about working with a rotary cutter, especially when I want to make something like strips, okay? And I'm thinking I'm going to cut this into thinner strips, and these thin strips then are going to give me smaller pieces that I can work with. So one of the things I'm going to do is show you one of my other favorite and go-to tools. And it's funny, you start thinking about what are the tools that I use all the time in almost every project. And the other tool I use is my OmniGrid 2-foot ruler. Now, this again is a great quilting tool because it allows you to put your fabric down and see where you are, but it has the built-in ruler, and it just makes it real easy to create a straight edge. This is probably about an eighth of an inch or so thick, so your blade will stay against it to a certain degree. And let me move this out of the way so I don't cut it accidentally. And I'm just going to go and create some strips in here. And the thought is, I don't know, maybe about 1/2 inch strips. Let me just measure this out and get a sense. Yeah, about 3/8 to 1/2 inch of strip. And again, irregular is going to make this a lot more interesting than if everything is uniform. So I'm going to take my my cutter, and I'm just going to, again, be careful. You pop your blade out here and just roll it next to my ruler. And there we go. Now I have a strip. I'm going to make a bunch of these because I want to be able to then cut these into smaller pieces, and I'll show you what we'll do with that. So give me a second to cut away here. And I'm not sure how many we're going to need, but I'm going to grab a bunch. I think it's going to be a lot of small piece cutting coming our way.
Approximately 10 hours later.
And there we are. We have strips. We have lots and lots and lots of strips. So what I want to be able to do with these strips now is to chunk them down even further. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a small pile of these like this. I don't know, 7 or 8 of them, and let me get them lined up into a stack, if you will. And I'm going to stack and whack, basically. So this is just a much faster way for me to cut out a lot of small pieces all at one time. Let me just get these down here. So I basically have just a row. And again, I'm going to use my rotary cutter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to cut through a few of these. And so I'm going to make a lot of small pieces. I don't know if you can see them there, gray against gray. But again, that's what I'm in the business to do right now, is to create some gray pieces, which will be the foundation for the next part of what I want to do here. And I'm going to make I don't know if I need all of these. We'll find out. And I'm keystoning them a little bit. It's almost like going to be a mosaic that we're going to make with paper when these are all done. We may have a few pieces that work beautifully, and we may have some we say, nope, that's not going to work. So again, what I'm thinking here is creating some sort of some interrelationship. We'll just have these pieces kind of almost raining down from the cloud. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just going to kind of line these up. And I have some darker ones and some lighter ones, and I'm randomly putting them in there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time worrying about what color goes where. I may play with the shape. What I am going to figure out is there kind of a natural border that I don't want to go past? And so, for example, I might leave about an inch or so here on the edges. One of the things I want to be able to do is sign my piece of art, which I usually do in the lower right-hand corner. So, I don't know. I'll play around with that. But again, if I come in here and put another row next to it, it's going to allow me, again, to get kind of this effect that I'm going for. And I'm just gonna lay some things out first. All right. Once I have things laid out, then I have the flexibility of being able to come back in here and tweak them as I need to.
3 days later.
All right. So finally, it takes a while, but everything is laid out here. And actually, I'm pretty happy with the results. Now, one of the things I'm thinking about is I might shift things a little bit over here to the right-hand side, but for the most part, I like what I've done here. I will share with you, I cut a few other pieces here of these tiles, let's call them, and made them a little bit shorter, and that just helps break things up a little bit, so everything wasn't roughly the same length. And I think it looks good. It staggers it out. And again, we're kind of fighting symmetry to a certain degree here with the abstraction of what we're doing. But what we need to focus on now is these pieces are still loose, right? So I've just kind of laid them where I think they should go, but they're we need to glue them down. And of course, this is where our handy glue stick is going to come in. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. That's a lot of little pieces. And so while I can grab said glue stick and let a little come out the end here, what I end up doing is kind of just grabbing a piece and maybe rubbing a little bit of glue on the back of it and pasting it down. And while that can take forever and a day, one of the things I've discovered that really can help this process along is just kind of planning ahead about what we want to do. So let me focus over here on this side. I'm going to move the pieces I want to glue out of the way. I'm going to shove them over here all the way to the right-hand side. So let me just get a moment to go over here. There we go. And again, this is an opportunity for me to kind of adjust things that I don't really love as I'm going down through. I don't like these two short pieces next to each other. We'll fix it. We can do that. We have the power. I have a spare right there. There we go. I think it looks better. All right. And all right. So that's kind of what I want to be able to have this row look like. But this row is going to end up in where this blank space is here now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my glue stick and I'm going to start laying down a trough, if you will. I'm just going to kind of do one of these to give myself a glue path. And this is where that purple comes in real handy. I can see where my glue is. And I'm just going to move my pieces and slide them over and give them a press. And again, we don't want to do this crazy quickly because we do want to give us an opportunity to be able to get into the glue while it's still adhesive. And if we do this and, if I glue the whole thing up, by the time I get to some of the stuff, the glue is dry. You can already see it starting to fade down here. So don't want that to be the problem. Now, the thing is, you can still see purple in here. And while that may not be what we want to have as a permanent thing, the simple reality is that that's going to fade shortly. And again, one of the things I'll mention here is if you put a lot of glue in here, sometimes even after it dries, if you look at it from certain angles, you can see a sheen on it. So I try to avoid just super saturating anything I'm doing with too much glue. That might be enough there. Wow. And there we are. Now, as you can see, it takes a while to get through all of these pieces being glued down. And I'm going to encourage you to give it some time to dry. As you do, the purple color, of course, will leave us and it won't be a problem. In some cases, you might find a little bit of glue squeeze out or something that looks a little bit discolored. And simply you can take your utility knife and just go in and do a little scrape. Just kind of, pull some of that glue off if you need to. A sponge with a little bit of damp on it. Sometimes if you dab at things, you can pick up the paste that way as well if you really want to clean things up. And again, unless your nose is pressed straight to this, most people are never going to see these tiny little imperfections. But do what you need to do to feel comfortable. Now, I like this piece. I'm happy with this. By the way, if you've created one of your own, good for you. That's why I'm here. I want you to feel confident to say, look, I got some colored paper, I got some glue, I got something to cut with. I can make my own artwork. Now, I like this piece. By the way, not every piece you create, you're going to look at and go, that's awesome. Sometimes you're going to say, well, that was a learning experience. But in this instance, I am really confident that this is a good enough piece. that I would hang in my home, and I'm going to put this up on my gallery. So if you go and look at the links down below, you will see a link to the Spectiva Studios gallery. That's my gallery. And I'm going to put this piece up. I haven't figured out a name for it yet, so that will be disclosed most likely by the time you see this video. I will sign this. I will get this in a frame. And if you're interested in purchasing this piece, I will be also providing down below a special discount code that is only known to the people who have watched this video. So if somebody comes into my gallery without having seen this video, they're going to pay full price. You guys are going to get a big discount, whoever wants to pick this piece up if you do. Right, so I'll put all that information down below, along with any links for some of the materials we use in the creation of this project. If you want to be able to do your own art and want to know where to pick up some of this stuff, I'll give you some pointers, some clues as to where you can pick up and source these materials. But there we go. So we have our mid-century art masterpiece. It's a pretty good looking piece. It's going to hang beautifully in somebody's home and really draw people's attention and be a conversation starter. So all good things, and give you something that will just make you feel good when you look at it. Anyway, that's all we have for this week, and I appreciate your time and attention being with me. And again, if this is the kind of thing you enjoy watching, please hit the subscribe button. And if you really liked this video in particular, please hit the like button. It really helps us out, gets our channel seen by other people, which is what we want to do. We want to share the love. We want people to get out there and really discover the love of abstract art. So that's all I have for this week. I'm Spider. Thank you so much for dropping by, and I'll see you next time.